This conference will now be recorded.
Yeah, welcome everyone. So we have looked into the requirements capturing techniques or requirement elicitation techniques as well as the requirements prioritization. Now we should also understand where do we use these particular techniques, right? So that we'll be able to find out how to use it better and all. So one of the most often used elicitation technique is the workshop technique, wherein you set up a meeting invite and you invite all the stakeholders and you have the direct interaction with them, and that leads to proper requirements elicitation. So this is the most often used technique. So let's now find out how do you conduct workshop effectively. Because unless and until you know what are the things that you need to be aware of before, during, and after conducting a workshop, what are the things that you need to be really aware of, it really doesn't lead to an effective workshop, right? So let's look into that particular points in this particular video. Okay, so first of all, even before conducting a workshop, let's say that you have joined a particular project as a IT business analyst, and your project manager usually gives you a brief. He says that, okay, this is the client, and this is the project that we are supposed to work upon. And he might also, the project manager also, can give you a sort of a heads up on who would be the stakeholders, the timelines of the project, the methodology, the team structure, and all those things. So all these things happen even before you have the very first interaction with your stakeholders for your workshop. Okay, so after having got this brief from the project manager, what are the things that you can do even before conducting a workshop? So the very first thing is do a proper stakeholder analysis, which is nothing but when you are informed that, okay, these four people or these seven people are going to be the stakeholders with whom you have to interact and derive the uh, definition of requirements, needs, and understand the business objectives and all. Then first of all, you need to understand who of these stakeholders are coming from which division of the client. That gives you a sort of understanding on what you can expect in terms of questions from them, in terms of inputs that they're going to give, what would be their specific requirements. Business requirement is something, but when you drill down, the stakeholder requirements could be a little bit more specific from that division. So you will be able to get that information before your first interaction. So do a proper stakeholder analysis by knowing a little bit about the background, the expectations and roles of the stakeholders. You'll also be able to sometimes get an understanding on who would be the key decision makers and who would be the subject matter expert within that from the client side, so on and so forth. So first get that information. The second thing is have the objectives clarified. You need to clearly outline the goals and objectives of your specific workshop. That will give the direction for the entire discussion. Okay, so you need to be clear as to what do you want to achieve from that very first workshop that you're going to conduct. And you should be in a position wherein you have clearly set out the points and you're aware of what it is, and then you share that specific agenda and the materials to the stakeholders also. What it means is, let's say you have understood who the stakeholders are, you did a little bit of research of who, what they are, and all, and then you understood the project. So the very first workshop that you're going to have with them could be more about understanding the business objective and detailing it out and understanding the pain points which need to be resolved using this particular application. Now, that could be your agenda. So what you do is, whatever understanding you have, you put it in a particular format and create a detailed agenda, which includes the major uh, points that you want to touch upon in this very first session. And if at all, if it requires any sort of presentation slides and all, you create it. And if you want to inform the stakeholders before itself about some information, or if you have a set of questions which you would be asking them in your workshop and you want them to be prepared with it, you can create an agenda, you can share this with them and say that, okay, this is what we will be discussing in this particular workshop. So that sets out the narrative. So that comes under the agenda and materials. Second, the next thing is the invitation reminders. So you will be sending out invitations well in advance, at least few days in advance. You need to send it because you need to understand that these stakeholders are usually at a very senior level in the client's company. So they would have a lot of things on their plate existing as a day-to-day work for them, and your workshops that you're conducting are like over and above that regular task that they have to handle. So unless and until you have informed them in advance and you include the agenda and you tell them why they specifically are required in that meeting and all, it may not really be fruitful to have a workshop because they might, end up not joining if they are not aware of the specific requirements that you're looking from them. So you need to send invitation few days before and then send reminders just a couple of days before saying that okay, tomorrow is a meeting or within 2 days we have this workshop to be conducted. Hope to see you there. This sort of things. So you send the invitation reminders. The next thing is the tech check and room settings. This seems to be a very trivial thing, to be frank, but it really is important. So what comes in tech check is nothing but ensuring that all the required, you know, things are there, working in a working position in the meeting room. Maybe you want to use the project or you want to use the screen monitor to show some slides, or you might want to connect with some stakeholders who are not available there through a conference call, through a Teams call. So you need to ensure that the Teams call is working in that room, or you sometimes may not have access to that meeting room because that's in the client location and you are not part of the client company. As an ITBA, you're part of the service company sometimes, so you might not have access. So that might delay your joining the session on the D-Day. Or sometimes you might want to quickly search something on the net during the session and show it out to them. So that needs to be looked into. Like some like you have to ensure you want to show something on the net, so you need to have the office Wi-Fi connected properly on your laptop. So all these things look very small enough, but you need to take care of all of these stuff. And also the room settings. It can be like you are inviting seven stakeholders, and suddenly on that day you find that there are not enough chairs in the room. So you don't have to set up the chairs, but you need to at least know whom to connect with, the facility staff who can help you in these things, or you might need a whiteboard, anything like that. So making sure that all these things are there in place, that is something which you need to ensure. Then there is something called as a facilitation plan, which is nothing but you need to plan the entire approach. How will you manage time? How do you encourage participation from the stakeholders? And worst case scenario, if there could be some sort of potential conflicts in terms of discussion points, then how do you want to resolve them? So all of these things you need to have well prepared even before your workshop begins. Okay, so this is what you need to do before. Then what do you do on that particular day when you're conducting the workshop, right? So for that, what you have to look into is we have to start with a brief introduction. Introduction doesn't mean introducing yourself and stakeholders. That is required only in the very first workshop. But later on, in the subsequent workshops, what is required is you need to start the workshop by talking about the agenda and the objectives. You'll say that, okay, today's meeting is for discussing on this particular requirements and getting the details jotted down. And you'll also set the ground rules, okay, how the questions can be asked. Sometimes you might think that, okay, putting all the questions to the end of the workshop is better. Sometimes you want that discussion to happen during the discussion, during the requirements gathering itself, setting up the ground rules for all of these things that you need to do in the very first part of your first few minutes of your workshop. Then what you need to do is look at the engagement technique that you want to use. Like even within the workshop, sometimes it might happen that you might have brought out some handouts which you want everyone to be going through. So you share it with them, you ask them to read and then share their concerns. Or sometimes it could be that you wanted to discuss about the pros and cons of a particular option that you want to look into. Sometimes there could be some interactive exercises. So you need to inform the stakeholders beforehand that this is what we will be doing in the next half an hour or in the next 1 or 2 hours of time. Okay, that comes under the engagement techniques. And under communication, what comes into picture is clearly articulating your ideas and concepts. I might have touched upon this topic before, but I want to reiterate that good English is equal to good communication skills. Okay, because you might be very fluent in English, but if you use a lot of jargon, a lot of flowery language, something which could be informed in one line, you're stretching it into 5 lines, then your communication is really not good. So you need to focus on presenting the information in the crisp and short format. Okay, and also you should encourage the other person to speak. Here I need to mention one more thing, that when you are conducting a workshop, you need to keep one thing in your mind, that you are, as a BA, as an IT business analyst, you would be the least knowledgeable person in that particular meeting room. It's a given thing, because here you have the senior folks from the client organization who are sitting in front of you as stakeholders, and they have a clear information about what they want. Okay, they are running the business, so they know a lot more. They know about the customer segmentation, they know about how things work in the market, they know what should be the pricing strategy, they know how they should do the advertising for it. They'll know a lot of those things, and here you are there in the meeting room to understand those requirements from them, right? So you should be actually having a less of speaking and more of listening happening from your end. Okay, you should put out some open-ended questions and get the information from them, and from that you should be able to drill down to get the exact requirements, right? So encourage open and honest communication among them, and be an active listener. Okay, this becomes part of your communication. Next thing is time management. This is again something which needs to be looked into, because in the initial introduction, you might have mentioned the agenda, saying that these are the things which I want to cover. But say halfway down the workshop, you have realized that you have not even moved 20% of your agenda. Then what do you do? So you need to bring back the discussion back into the requirements whenever it is going a little tangential, and that requires you to be being a little bit diplomatic and ensuring that whatever agenda was set up for the meeting, you're getting all of those things done. Okay. The next thing is documentation. It is nothing but, say you have conducted a 1 hour long workshop, and unfortunately you have not documented, or you're not written down any of the points which have been discussed in the 1 hour. After the workshop is over, if you are asked, okay, tell me the summary of what all was discussed, you will be able to summarize it, but there's a very great chance of you missing out at least a couple of crucial points, because it's a 1 hour long duration. A lot of points would have been discussed, and if you have not noted down, then you're bound to miss out. So, documenting whatever is being discussed, the crucial points which are being discussed, is very important. Okay, so make sure that you make quick notes. You don't have to elaborate and write long sentences when it is being discussed. You need to just make quick points, so that when you read your own quick points at the end of the workshop, you can recall that yes, this particular point was related to so and so. That is important. So make sure that you document every crucial point that was discussed. Of course, you'll have review, feedback, and all those things later, but first of all, making that point noted down, that's important. Okay. And then comes the conflict resolution. Okay. What is conflict resolution? It's nothing but, if there is a sort of heated argument going on between two stakeholders about a specific requirement, or if there is, extremely opposite uh, view about how a particular feature has to be implemented within the stakeholders. You're not involved in that, because you are more of a facilitator. You can not take a tough stance on anything, but it's for the stakeholders to be aligned. And if there is something like that happening, you should know how to carefully and diplomatically diffuse the situation. Okay. It's not always required that you should be letting the conversation go on. So you should know how to diffuse. There are a couple of things that you can do. One thing is you can say that, okay, this requirement, we can put it on hold, we can take it up later, or you can just make a note of the important points from both of them and then say that you'll have a one-to-one conversation with them to understand the things better. Or usually the project sponsor would be the key decision maker. So you will have a one-to-one discussion with the project sponsor later to find out how to get things sorted out. There are a few other things like that that you can do. The main point is, do not let that specific discussion go long. Try to make it uh, be subsided and put aside and go to the next requirement and discuss those things. So that can help in the conflict resolution. I think we have already crossed a little bit of time, so we'll stop this video here. The next part of this how to conduct a workshop, which is about what you need to do after you have conducted the workshop, we will look into it in the next video. Okay, thanks everyone.